we are at that point where Shrouded Fable is gone. We only have 2 booster boxes left on the Pokemon Center. We're going to talk about that in this video. We have Stellar Crown and Temporal Forces. This is all that's available for booster boxes on the Pokemon Center, which means one of these is going to be the next sellout on the Pokemon Center. It's kind of just a matter of time. Things have just been moving that way. In the past, boxes could sit on the Pokemon Center for years and years before they would sell out, and then they would, see a little bit of a run. But the market has accelerated things. Products so hard to get. We're looking at Temporal Forces and Stellar Crown as the next potential sellouts on the Pokemon Center. I mean, Shrouded Fable did it. PC ETB much more affordable though. Booster boxes do have a higher barrier to entry. $161. But currently it's just a matter of time until these ones are gone as well. And when we take a look at what we already have going on for Stellar Crown, and we'll get to the other set in a second, but Stellar Crown boxes are already up 46% in the past 3 months. They're already above MSRP here currently on TCG Player at $165, 46% from 115 up to a high of 167 currently, 165, 167, and you can see last solds here pretty consistent in the 160s. You got one as high as 170, but more consistent 160s and a few in the 150s here on the booster box. Lowest listed is kind of upper 160s. You can see this is pretty much 170. And then after that, it does go to 170. So I do think that if on TCG Player, if this box goes to 170, then you come back over here and you go, okay, well, 161 on the Pokemon Center. And, before it was, once a box got close to MSRP or obviously exceeded, then you would go to the cheapest place that you could get it, right? And that's kind of where we're at now. So Stellar Crown is primed for another sellout. In theory, we should see a little bit of a run on the boxes after they sell out from the Pokemon Center. Traditionally, that's what we see. We see a little bit of a jump and they move up, following that sellout. So that'll be interesting to see if that happens. If we zoom out right here, we can see the box is up 50%, 55% on the year. Back here it was $100 box back in October. Nothing crazy. The set as a whole, take a look at some of the cards. Regarded as maybe not the strongest set out there, but it does have a few really nice cards. Currently, the Terapagos is still the most expensive card from the set, and it's not really performing super well right now. In the last month, it's down a few percent. In the last 3 months, it's down 8%. If we zoom out a little bit more, you can see, obviously, pre-release pricing up here at $150, all the way down to $85 on the Terapagos. It's the new Pokemon featured in the new anime, so it doesn't really appeal to a ton of people, older people, I should say. While I do think that the kids, are going to like this card, I think they like it now, but also in the future, they might have a little bit of nostalgia for Terapagos. This set also introduced the rainbow borders, so I do think that that's worth noting. But you can see, lowest listeds right here are actually a little bit below market, right? This would put it kind of at 80, which market's at 85 on the Terapagos. So the Terapagos might be declining, and we could have an illustration rare case on our hands like we've seen from other sets in the era, where the illustration rare slowly over time overtakes the special illustration rare and holds that number 1 slot. Now, this set, I think, honestly, it kind of only needs 2 cards, right? It just needs the Squirtle and the Bulbasaur, and I think that's enough for people to want to rip these boxes, because this Squirtle card, obviously extremely popular Pokemon, but it's just a fun card. Pairs with the Bulbasaur obviously nicely, and then that tails into the Charmander from Obsidian. But the Bulbasaur actually, or the Squirtle rather, if we look right here, it was up around $80. It's come down off of that. Right here it was at 80, and it came down to 67, and then kind of bounced up a little bit. It's actually at $70, so it was plateauing around 80 for a while. You can see a lot of sales right here on January 24th. That shot the price up to 80, and it did regress back to 70. If we zoom out right here, you can see cheapest price this card was upper 30s back in like late September, and so now it's a $70 card. You can see a lot of copies available too on this. Sales pretty consistent 60s, 70s, looks like. So potentially this card might be coming down a little bit. Obviously, like I said, the quantity available is kind of high on the Squirtle. Lowest listed from a starred seller is around 69, which is just a little bit below market currently. The Bulbasaur is seeing a similar thing, right? This card ran up here, up to 70. Now it's back down to 60. In the last month, like I said, same thing. A lot of sales on the 24th. It did shoot it up, and now it's coming back down. So we'll see where it ends up leveling out at. But, the Bulbasaur card and the Squirtle card are really nice cards from the set. And after that, it kind of falls apart a little bit, right? And that's where these, maybe you start to see the reason why these boxes are available still on the Pokemon Center, right? Stellar Crown, not the strongest set. You have the Dash Bun, which I do think is a really nice looking card. I do think it's super fun. I do like the theme, everything about this card. Not super attached to this Pokemon personally, but this card, I did fall in love with this card. I think this is a super fun card. And, this had a big shoot up. You can see, we'll see if we can find the specific date. Looks like it was the 31st of January. Obviously, targeted card here. People bought a ton of copies. That shot the price up to 48, and it kind of has come down off of that. And it's come down just a little, down to 42. It is a special illustration rare, so, a little bit more difficult to pull than a regular illustration rare. But, this is what you're looking at, essentially, when you're talking about Stellar Crown, right? There's just not a ton there. There are some other cards that are nice, right? Like the Galvantula card, the SIR, it looks nice. But it's just not... There's not a big chases, right? Whereas I think with Temporal Forces, I think it's a little bit different. And I do think that set has a little bit more potential overall. But when you talk about the set as a whole, I know this isn't in stock. The PC ETBs are not in stock, but I do think it's worth talking about the PC ETBs because it's part of the set and part of how you perceive Stellar Crown, right? And these have come up to 116. Most recent sales actually on the PC ETB in the 120s. You could see a few in the teens, to as high as 140, which is kind of surprising. And before that, pretty much 120s sales here on the PC ETB. Now that tails into the promo card, which I do think is worth talking about. The Noctowl. I think it's a nice looking card, and it's not up a ton. It's definitely not one of the worst PC ETB promos. I do like the Noctowl a lot. I do think it's a fun card, and I think it separates a little bit. Even if it's a little bit lower than some of the nicer cards, it's definitely above some of the less popular Pokemon, I do think, in my opinion. But we haven't seen a ton of movement here on the Noctowl, which isn't really super to be expected, right? It's not that popular of a card, but if we zoom out a little bit, you can see, it has had some good growth. It did come out the gate as low as 17, 18 bucks, now being 30, near 40. That does bode well for the Noctowl, just as a, stamped promo. People like the stamped promos a lot. Now, this is what I was talking about. When you zoom out on Stellar Crown, right? There's some cards that I do think catch my eye. Like I said, I do like the Dash Bun's a fun card. The Hydrapple's kind of a cool looking card as well. $30 SIR. The Galvantula one looks nice. And then after that, this trainer card doesn't really do it for me. The Zeraora is a really nice looking IR, but it's only a $10 card. And Raboot, Joltik, and Ledian are nice cards as well, but they're just not enough to bring enough attention to the set. If I'm being completely honest, it just doesn't quite fully do it for me. So, and Stellar Crown, a set I like. set I like. But when you're comparing, there's 2 sets available on the Pokemon Center. Let's make that the argument. Which one are you picking up? I think I'm going to lean personally towards Temporal Forces. And you can see the booster box is up 38% right here, from 120 up to, this one's a little bit higher, 166 right now. You got listed medium price at 200. 100 boxes available on TCG. Last sold's 165, 168, 165. I got a 165 down here. Anyway, so the booster box pricing is actually fairly similar, but where I feel like the set differs is the Pokemon and the cards in the set. Obviously, we'll take a look at that. The Raging Bolt here is, while, this is not a Raikou card, it is a Raikou variant. So I do think that, you have the legendary variants, and I think that plays enough weight, carries enough weight for the set potentially. Plus, if you've seen these cards in person, not, and that can be said, this can be said for most cards ever, if I'm being honest. They look great in person. They look amazing. And this card, it's up only 17% in the past 3 months. In the past month, it's only up 4%. I get it. You can zoom out right here. We can see it's 86% up off its pre-release price. This was an interesting card at release, from 50 up to 70, back down to 50, and then back up to around 100. Came back down to 68, and now it did crack that $100 mark in December for a little bit, and it hasn't really been able to really crack and hold since then. You can see it hit 102 recently, and then it kind of came back off of that. But right around $100 mark for the Raging Bolt. You can see that's pretty reflected in the last solds. Lowest listed from a starred seller, just under 100. So all that's matching, holding up, showing strength. Then you have the Iron Crown, where this one, nothing for me for the Pokemon personally, but this is another one of those really nice looking cards. And this one shot up recently, up to 78, and it's kind of cooled off, in the 60s. This is one where, for me, like I said, I don't think that this is one of the desires. I think you leave it towards some of the other cards in the set. But, this is currently the second most valuable card, so we do have to talk about it. You can't just ignore it. Lowest listed from starred sellers is around 65, which is actually a little bit above market currently. And last sold's very consistent, $65, $66 for the most part. Very consistent across the board on the Iron Crown. Now, the Walking Wake is when you start to get back into, like I said, some of those Pokemon variants that we were talking about that I do think can carry enough weight. Stunning in-person card. You kind of get Pandora from Avatar, like with the glowing plants and stuff. So yeah, this version of this Pokemon, could be, once again, they all can be like a little divisive, right? People don't like, a lot of people don't like the versions of them, which is totally fine, but there's a lot of people who do. And this one on the decline a little bit as well. You can see in the past month, it's kind of flat, a little 1%, but from up here, from 67 down to 62, nothing crazy. But if we zoom out, you're going to see a similar thing, like pre-release pricing at 40, came up to 50, back down to 37, and then it's kind of been on a little stair-step climb since about May. 37 all the way up to get to where it's at now, $60 on the Walking Wake. And then you have the Gouging Fire, obviously the Entei variant. Similar thing, the charts on these cards are all looking fairly similar, which, could be viewed as a good thing, as a consistency thing. They all kind of look the same. They're moving together. You could make the argument that it's bad that you want to see something break out, but I kind of look at it as a good thing. It was as high as 55. Now it's down to around 50. Most recent sales in the 40s and 50s, so pretty consistent there. If we zoom out, you can see this card's not up as much, not as popular. People maybe just gravitating away towards this version of the Pokemon. But it did go as high as 51 before, and then obviously 38 being the low that it's kind of just coming off of. So, once again, there's a reason this set's still available as well. I'm not saying that this is the strongest set there's ever been, right? Lowest listed, it's around just under 50. which does line up with market price. You do have the Ghastly card, which I think is a potential big card, obviously, and it's up pretty massive, 92% in the past 3 months. You get Meowth, you get all 3 Ghastly evolutions here pictured in the card. Illustration rares, once again, we talked about illustration rares having big potential, being able to carry sets just from an illustration rare. So, I do think that if this box price continues to move up, sells out on the Pokemon Center, and then continues to move, we could see more movement on the Ghastly in the future. It's already up big right now from $25 up to 50, and then it kind of came down off of that. You're seeing market price around $48. In the most recent sales, you're seeing upper 40s to mid 50s. Is kind of what we're seeing. 2 as low as 25. That kind of seems like an anomaly for an English copy there. So we're gonna say that that's a little bit of an outlier. Lowest listed just below 50 from a starred seller, lines up with market price. If we zoom out on the 1 year, you can see obviously this card's gonna have really good growth. Out the gate, pre-release price was a $16 card, which is wild to think of. Shot up to 30, came back down to 17, back up to 30, and then slowly back down to 20. And this was in September. So from September to now, it's stair-stepped all the way up to where it's at now, just under $50 on the Ghastly. We'll take a look at the set as a whole in a second. But, PC ETBs we're going to talk about as well. Now, this is one where the promos not really doing it for me. So we're not really going to go too deep into the promos, but people still want the PC ETBs. I think that the Stellar has a much stronger promo. But, you got 2 versions here of the PC ETBs. So if there's a collectability aspect of people wanting to collect the PC ETBs, they're both kind of in a similar place. Up around 50%, up into 1 market price. However, last sold, we're seeing higher into the 140s. For this one, for the Walking Wake, and then most recent sales on this one, 120s, 130s. So the Walking Wake one showing a bit more promise. Going up to 140. Lowest listed from a starred seller, there's only one available at 300, so we'll see if that sale ends up going through. On this one, it's the same thing, 300. You have other sellers here having them at a lower price. But yeah, so if we pop back over to Temporal Forces just for a second, and we want to go by cards only, there are a few other really nice illustration rare cards from this set. You can see, obviously, you got the SIRs here. You got the Morty's Conviction SIR with the Gengar, which is a nice card. Iron Leaves is a nice looking card. Sawsbuck, Metagross, Litten, Lickitung, I think are good illustration rares. Deerling, also nice looking, got the colors, it's popping. I think Arbok is one of those cards that, I kind of identified as, for me, I think this should be higher up price-wise. I think this should be over the Sawsbuck, at least somewhere in here, around the $30 range. You would think, being a popular Gen 1 Pokemon, and it has seen some pretty explosive growth recently, 200%. Maybe this one's one of those slow burns, but if this one moves up a little bit more, it could potentially change your perspective of the set. I mean, let me know in the comments, like, where do you feel about these sets, right? Obviously, the Arbok I do think is a nice card, but like, do you fall into the camp of, there's a reason these sets are still available. They're not that good, and that was the argument for Shrouded Fable. It was up forever, and then it was gone, right? And now we're seeing a price increase on Shrouded Fable PC ETBs. A little bit different because that kind of only had that product, right? Shrouded Fable only had the PC ETB available on the Pokemon Center, versus these are booster boxes, so it is a little bit different for what's available. So I do get it. It's not a one-for-one comparison, but I do think it's worth talking about. Between Stellar, Crown, and Temporal, I would lean a little bit more towards Temporal as the stronger set, but I do like Stellar, Crown as well. These lower to middle sets, however you want to view them, they can perform well long term. It also depends on what's going to get reprinted. stuff with what's has to get reprinted now. Other things definitely aren't going to get reprinted. So you can say that you could kind of try and use that as your point of like targeting. But I would lean Temporal above and then Stellar personally. But I do think it's interesting. I don't know like how long it's going to be until these sets sell out. Nobody knows. We did recently lose access to be able to track the stock on the Pokemon Center, so your guess is as good as mine. Maybe we'll be able to get that access better after they change their website in the future, but for now, we don't know the stock on these, and I do think it's an interesting point. It'll be very interesting once like there's no booster, because like the ETBs are gone now. If there's no booster boxes available, what are things going to look like? So that's very interesting. That's kind of why I just brought this video up, was to talk about the last 2 booster boxes available. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. My name is TJ. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And remember, it was never a phase.